Now let's look at how we can use the verb to be, être, to make sentences to describe the world around us. So how would I say, for example, I am American? I could say, I suis, am, américain, American. Je suis américain. Now notice that this adjective corresponds with the subject, je. So if the subject je is feminine, we add an I at the end to make the adjective feminine as well, making je suis américaine. But in my case, since I'm a male, I say je suis américain. Also note that the verb is conjugated for je suis. Just as we say I am and not I are or I is, we say je suis, always. Now let's look at another sentence. Let's say the big dog is old. Le grand chien est vieux. Le grand chien est vieux. Here we have the, which we've talked about earlier, which corresponds to the number and gender of the subject, dog. The same happens for this adjective, grand, big, which is singular and masculine, just like dog. And then we have this verb, is, est, which is also singular and for the third person, a dog. And then finally we have another adjective, which, like the first adjective, corresponds in gender and number to the subject, dog, chien. These two adjectives are in different positions, but they both are singular and masculine because they're both based around this word, dog, chien. So as you can see, everything in the sentence comes together around the gender, number, and person of the word dog in the middle, the subject. Let's look at a similar sentence where we say, the old house is big. La vieille maison est grande. La vieille maison est grande. Here, instead of le, we have la, to correspond to maison, house, which is feminine. We then have vieille, which is the feminine form of vieux. This adjective is irregular, so the two forms look very different, instead of other adjectives where they simply take an I at the end. Then we have est, just like we had in the sentence before, which is for the third person singular, is. Note that this does not change with gender, whereas everything else in the sentence does. And finally we have grande, which is also singular and feminine, with an added I at the end. So here we have a very similar sentence to the sentence above it, but because this noun, the subject, is feminine and not masculine, everything changes its form. Le grand chien est vieux versus la vieille maison est grande. Finally, let's look at a sentence where the subject is both feminine and plural. Now remember, for adjectives, if something is feminine, it takes an E, and if it's plural, it takes an S after the E. And for the verb to be, être, we conjugate that sont, S-O-N-T, for things that are third person and plural. So here our subject will be les villes belges, the Belgian cities, cities in Belgium. Belge is our first adjective, and that takes an S at the end to correspond to ville, which is plural. And remember, in this subject, les villes belges, only way we know it's plural in hearing it is from this article, les. So, les villes belges sont petites. The adjective petit takes an E and an S at the end, making petite. So we have les villes belges sont petites. A few places here I've put in these green loops, which indicate that a liaison can be done there. For the purposes that we're looking at now, this isn't necessarily relevant, but if you're interested in it, you can take note of that. This S makes a liaison with this A, this N with this E, and this N with this E. But for the purposes we're looking at now, we simply must remember the following. Adjectives, no matter where they are in relation to the subject, if they're describing the subject, have to correspond in number and gender. If they're after the verb to be, or if they're directly with the adjective itself. The verb to be has to correspond to the subject in number and person. In these examples, we have suis for the first person singular, et for the third person singular, and sont for the third person plural. C'est tout.